Welcome to Ruben Uncut. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about answering a very important question. Should you go to college or trade school? Now, I'll start off by saying that this is not going to be some sort of me selling you on one or the other. The answer to what you should do is actually a lot more complicated than, oh, college is good or trade school is good. There's currently a lot of push to have people go to trade school these days, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. So the question becomes, how do you choose? Which one is right for you? Reality is that you may not like the answers, or the answers might make this easier for you. We'll find out in a minute as I get into it. The reality is that both of them are viable options for people looking to have some economic upward mobility. Well, depending on their situation. And that's what it's all basically going to be coming down to. Today, though, I'm going to try and answer these things in almost like chapters. We're going to do like a chapter thing, okay? So chapter 1, the truth about capitalism, at least in terms of college. Now, the truth about capitalism is that capitalism is the game that we are all playing all the time, whether we want to or not. Yes, that's right. It's actually impossible for socialists to just be like, no, I won't use an iPad, because they live in a system that requires them materially to engage with capitalism. But that's not the point. Here's some things that you need to understand about capitalism. Capitalism is a game. But it's also a game they don't tell you the rules to. And if they did, this question would already be answered for you. Because the name of the game in capitalism is inheritable wealth. Yes, I know that's unfortunate to hear. However, that's the end result. It's not your goal. The reality is that we live in a society where a lot of people are always looking for get-rich-quick schemes. But get-rich-quick schemes, regardless of how often those things have been skewered in media and arts forever, the reality is that capitalism only allows for an extremely small percentage of people to actually get rich quick. It's just not... You typically have to do some pretty extreme shit for that to happen. Or be very, very lucky. Now, some things about capitalism that people are also not going to appreciate hearing, but they need to understand are false dichotomies. In life, you're going to have to work hard and be in the right place at the right time. A lot of people don't like to hear that part of success is being in the right place at the right time, because they feel like it undermines their hard work. But the reality is you actually kind of need both to really succeed in anything. But let's get back to inheritable wealth. So here's the deal of how capitalism is meant to be played by most people. You start off with a guy. Guy is poor, super poor, working hard labor and sacrificing so that his kid can go to public school, so that his kid can then later go to a trade school. And then he's going to work super hard at trade school and sacrifice and put away money so that his kid can then go to college and get a white-collar job. And then that guy is going to work his ass off at his white-collar job to make sure that his son can go to school and learn something that'll get him an even higher white-collar job, or possibly get him into investment. But if you get into investment too early, you're probably going to be a douchebag. Like child investors who are getting rich on crypto, your growth is going to be horrifically stunted, bro. You have a shit ton of money and almost zero life experience. You need people around you to check that part of your brain that's, still a fucking teenager. But let's get back to it. Do you see what I'm saying, though? Is that it's a series of leveling up across generations. That's how most wealth is accumulated. In fact, the vast majority of billionaires under 30 inherit their money. I know what you're thinking, but Ruben, what about crypto, bro? What about all these kids blowing up, getting rich on crypto? Right place, right time is the reality of that. You see, they got into the market as the market was expanding. That's how you do it. That's the big part of being in the right place at the right time to make that money. not everyone's going to get the same results as these kids who started investing in crypto early. That's just the reality of that situation. So that's the series of capitalism there. Now, in fairness, capitalism says that you can sequence break, which for people who are unfamiliar with video games is when a game allows you, or sometimes through a glitch, allows you to skip portions of the game to get ahead faster. Capitalism does allow you to sequence skip sometimes. For example, that guy who's working hard labor, his kid hypothetically could still go to college and get a white collar job, thereby skipping an entire blue collar section of advancement. That's totally possible. It's harder. That person will probably accumulate more debt unless they have scholarships or got there for sports, which, by the way, I just want to say, all the power to you if you use sports to get through college. But I really think that we as a society need to wake up at one point and realize that if college requires us to channel our children's bodies into the ridiculousness that is fucking sports, in order that for them to gain some level of intelligence and intellect, our system is fucked. And we really need to look at ways to get kids into college besides, sports. Like, if sports are your only way to pay for college, that says a lot more about the system than how we have a problem paying for college, which we're going to talk more about in a minute. But so that's the first thing of capitalism you understand. That is how capitalism expects you to play the game, building off of one generation onto another until eventually grandkids or something, get super rich. This is a college campus behind me, in case you're wondering. It's not mine. I didn't go here. On the back of this shirt, it says Kent State. But listen, so I just laid out a scenario that could give you an idea of where you want to go with your degree. But here's the other part of capitalism you need to understand. Capitalism, Chapter 2, markets. So ultimately, here's the thing that a lot of people are not factoring into this argument. What is the market for the job that you want or are training for? Because the reality is that no matter what you want to aim for, no matter what you want to be, you are going to be competing for those positions. And the major difference between college and trade school is that college is for jobs that have higher levels of competition, meaning the more people that go to college, the harder it is to get those jobs. Now, technically, trade school jobs are more plentiful. There are more of them to be had, but that does not mean that you're not still in competition for those positions. Hypothetically, if we were to see a huge population shift over to trade school jobs, that would drive up the competition for trade school jobs. At which point, it's going to become very clear which technical institutes are, better than others. So it is probably a good idea to look at the market and figure to yourself, how much competition am I really up for? Are you the type of person who can thrive in a highly competitive market for certain jobs? Then by all means, be an architect. It's a great job. It pays well. You'll get lots of work if you get any work at all. I always choose architecture student as the perfect example because it's a degree that makes sense to the average person. The world needs architects. It's a very technical job. Going to college for it makes sense. And if you told your parents you were going to be an architect, they'd probably be like, that's great, son. Here's the thing, though. Architecture degrees, they employ at rates lower than theater degrees. Believe it or not, there are more theater openings than there are architect openings. Turns out one architect can do a lot of different projects and get a lot of work at one time, meaning that the competition for that position is high. So you have to be fucking passionate about it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a number of white-collar jobs that you can still get with that degree, but you probably won't be building any buildings. See what I'm saying? The reality is that the vast majority of people do not work in their field that they got a degree in. According to Cora, recent job research indicates, and by the way, I'm kind of sketchy on Cora, to be honest. I've seen some good information on Cora, and I've also seen people who are honestly not educated enough to actually answer the questions on Cora. But we're going to go with this statistic anyways. This is the most recent statistic I could find. Less than half of despite the current hot job market, less than half of recent graduates, 47%, have been able to secure full-time employment in a job related to what they did in college. Very often, a college degree is good for very generic type of work, manager positions, essentially, that you can get for having a degree, even if it's not a degree in whatever you're managing, because college degrees equal white-collar employment. Sometimes, most of the times. It really depends. Like, heavily on your situation. The good news is, though, is that technically 47% is actually up. The previous statistic I looked at was in the 20s. In fact, a study from 2013 puts it at about 27%. Yeah, and this doesn't just apply to people who want to be philosophy majors, which, by the way, society needs philosophy majors. I understand that there's skepticism about that, and you'd be right. It's not a huge employment opportunity. It's just something that society benefits from having. You know, people just doing philosophy, thinking real hard about shit. That's where we get our, reasoning in society. We kind of need it. And you're probably thinking, but anyone could do philosophy. Yeah, hypothetically, except you realize there have been thousands of years of philosophy, and someone who just starts masturbating to their ideas in a room, it could just be, instinctively coming up with ideas that people thought of 200 years ago or further. So if you want to get into philosophy, yeah, go to college for that. We'll get to that in a minute, though. So the question becomes, well, how do trade schools compare to that? Now, I will also throw out here that if you want to increase your odds, now I know some of you might be saying, well, what about STEM, Ruben? STEM is a college degree that seems pretty good. And you're right, STEM is important. And there are a lot of high-paying jobs in STEM. That being said, 74% of people with science-related bachelor degrees don't work in STEM fields, according to an article from the Washington Post from 2014. Now, I'm not asking you to take that as rote or anything, but let's get to trade schools. About 74% of trade school students are employed after graduation, compared to 64% of students with bachelor's degrees. Now, to be fair, also, those numbers are not necessarily inherent to having employment in your field. That's just employment overall. It's also worth noting that the average trade school education takes about 2 years, whereas a bachelor's degree typically takes at least 4 years. The average annual income, though, for a trade school graduate is $35,720. This comes to us from getnooks.org. No idea what that means. Don't know if I should trust them, but hey, it's here. Trade schools versus college statistics, which, by the way, that average amount for trade school graduates is a little over $15 an hour. Just so you're aware, $15 an hour comes to about $35,000 a year. Whereas bachelor degrees holders, on average, make about $59,124 a year. 43% of trade school graduates earn more than those who graduate from traditional colleges. So even though the averages do play in the favor of college students, there will be some trade school people who will be more successful than college students. Worth knowing that the dropout rate at colleges is about 41%, whereas at trade schools, it's substantially lower at about 10%. This is honestly probably due to cost. Over 40 million jobs in the United States pay an average of $55,000 per year, require less education than a bachelor's degree. Just so you know, that's middle class. And actually, by today's standards, it's the lower end of middle class. And the number of children you have in your family will also alter whether that's middle class or lower middle class. 20% of high school students will not complete their degree within 6 years, compared to only 5% of trade school students. Now, to be fair, part of that's because it lasts less time. 30% of those with associate's degrees, those are degrees you can get from a 2-year college, by the way, or even a community college, which is extremely more affordable. 30% of those with associate's degrees earn more than people with bachelor's degrees, indicating the effectiveness of trade and vocational courses. To be fair, you can also get, like I said, you can also get an associate's from most colleges. Trade school jobs are projected to grow by 10% between 2016 and 2026. So that's higher than the national average for all jobs, which sounds good, although I will point out that that is literally 1% a year, which, that's still growth. Now you're probably thinking, Ruben, that sounds like it really sucked off the trade schools. And, maybe it does. And maybe that article did suck off the trade schools a little bit. But let's get real, though. For a lot of people, trade schools are going to be a viable option. Am I saying you should go with trade schools? Well, that brings us to our next chapter. What do you actually want to do? Do you know what you want to do? This is a very valid question. In fact, this question alone might answer your question of what you should do. If you're passionate about what you want to do, whatever it is, then you're going to want to pursue that. If you can make it through that, if that passion can drive you to compete in whatever market you're in, whether it be a college degree or a trade school degree, then absolutely go for that. Everything else be damned. But Ruben, what if it doesn't work out? There is no guarantee that any of these will work out. There are no guarantees that your college degree will work out. There are no guarantees that getting an HVAC license will work out. It's very possible that you will go to trade school, get a job with your trade school degree, and realize that you fucking hate trade school jobs. Whether it be the people you have to work with, the situations, the hours, lack of freedom, whatever. The reality is you could choose either option, and it could turn out that you chose wrong. Unfortunately, this is part of life. This is the being in the right place at the right time part of life. Now, trade school jobs are currently growing. How much will the market for that be good, though? So the demand for trade school jobs has, according to those statistics I just read you, go up about 1% a year. But if the percentage of people who are applying for trade school jobs goes up at a faster rate than that, it becomes kind of a moot point when it comes to competition. Not saying that will happen. We honestly won't know for several years until we know exactly how big of a shift people have had towards trade schools. That being said, trade schools are also a great option because you might be competing with dumbasses. No offense to trade schools. There's a lot of intelligent people in trade schools. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that sometimes people go to trade school because they are not smart. But they also still need a job. Some of those people will still, drop out, or not everyone is built for trade school. Trade schools typically cover many essential skills in just a few years or months. As such, vocational programs may adhere to rigorous, fast-paced schedules. Unlike universities, they may not have breaks throughout the year. For some people, that's not going to be what you're looking for. Also, if you want to be a marine biologist or an architect, you're not going to go to trade school. If you want to be a scientist, you're not going to go to trade school. Although, you can get an associate's degree in science fields if your idea of being a science is being a lab technician or, a lab assistant. Honestly, that shit's good paying work because it's dangerous. It's worth noting that trade school jobs are more likely to put you in jobs with what I will refer to as OSHA situations. Now, I know what you're thinking, though. Ruben, I want to do art. Do I need to go to college to do art? And the answer to the question is sort of, sometimes, not really, could help. but also you might not need it. I'm sorry, did that seem like a non-answer? Well, it's because you wanted a degree in art. Art is hypothetically something anyone can just start fucking doing. There is no degree required. That being said, going to get educated about art can give you concepts for things like technical processes of art, history of art, so you have an understanding of what has been done and what experimentations have already succeeded or failed. And of course, connections. This is a big part of college, and actually, if you're in a good trade school as well. Going to universities, a lot of it's about making connections. You want to impress professors. You want to meet people. Sometimes colleges will give you the opportunities to be in the rooms with the people you'd actually like to work with. This is very true of STEM, but it's also true of the arts. Do you want to do art? Well, college can give you a lot of heads up on that. Do you necessarily need it? Hard to say. A lot of people have gotten famous through art education, but a lot of people have also gotten famous dropping out and just doing it. Hell, Quentin Tarantino has almost no education at all. Look at that guy, out there killing it. Although maybe if he went to college, he'd know that his 10-movie concept is bullshit. And often, a lot of directors had not even made their most significant work by the time they did their 10th movie. So if he had gone to college, maybe he'd know that. But, doesn't seem to really be hurting him. So the question is, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? The answer is, if you're willing to compete in those markets for those jobs, then sure, go to college or go to trade school. What if you don't know what you don't want to do? What if you don't know what you want to do? Well, that brings us to our next chapter. What to do if you don't know what you want to do? You don't know what you want to do, go to community college. I'm sorry, this is the only one I have a straightforward answer for. If you honestly have no idea where you want to go in your life or what you want to do, community college. Why community college? Well, because it's a sampler platter. Go there, take a bunch of classes, maybe audit them, which you can do for free. And find out if there's anything you actually give a shit about. Community college can point you in the right direction. Maybe get you an associate's degree at a community college that you then use to go to another college to get a bachelor's degree. If you've decided that that's the thing that your heart truly longs for, whatever that degree is. Of course, you could also go to community college and get a comparable trade degree, because some community colleges give you those as well. I mean, they're 2-year programs. So, yeah. Man, that show Community, they must have been really bad at going to school. That show lasted like 5 seasons. And community colleges only give out 2-year degrees and then expect you to either transfer somewhere else or get an associate's. I am just now realizing a huge flaw in that TV show. Although, that brings us to our final chapter, things you should think about. It's worth noting that not all trade schools are good, and not all colleges are good. In fact, some trade schools are scams. There have been lawsuits throughout the years. There have been schools that have been found being a problem. Big red flag is if a technical institute or trade school tells you that your employment is guaranteed. That's not true. There's a 26% chance that you will be unemployed. And that's if you're going to a good trade school. Some trade schools' qualifications are questionable because most trade schools are run for profit, meaning that there are trade schools out there that are just looking to take your money and may not actually give you proper credentials. This has been a problem for a while. I'm not telling you that all trade schools are scams. However, trade schools and colleges or universities, both situations, you need to understand where you're going. You need to understand if it's something you can afford. It's worth noting that you cut down costs of going to college significantly if you're going to a school and living with your family at the same time. To be fair, also true for trade schools. you're going to want to make sure that whether it's a college or a trade school, that they are reputable. And like I said, if they're guaranteeing you employment or where your career will go, that is a red flag. That is a sales tactic to make you feel comfortable and safe. Because trade schools, just like college, are not a guaranteed silver bullet. You're not going to automatically be a success. You will be competing against other people who went to those trade schools or universities. And you better hope that you are as good, if not better, than some of them. If you suck at your job, at a trade school-based job, they will fire you. And they'll fire you because technically most trade schools jobs, they're more dangerous. Like I said, trade school professions are more likely to make you encounter an OSHA situation or an, oh shit, I better call the government because they want me to climb this rickety ladder and tie a bunch of loose wires together. And I'm not qualified for it because I'm a fucking plumber. See what I'm saying? Although, to be fair, the plumber's probably a bad example, because plumbers have a lot more they're more their own bosses. I'm talking more about trade school jobs where you'd be working in like more of a factory situation. But the point is that yes, some trade school jobs will lead to jobs with higher levels of physical labor and safety hazards, which isn't to say that you won't, fall off a building as an architect. And it's not to say that all college degree jobs are inherently safe either. OSHA violations can occur everywhere. It's just less likely in white-collar situations. Student loans, of course, are a big deal, and it's worth noting that some trade schools also do student loans. Now, that to be fair, it costs less to go to a trade school, so you're ultimately going to be borrowing less money and hopefully paying it off faster. And I could make a whole video of itself on how fucked student loans are, because they are fucked. But that's an entirely different topic. And some of you, if you can avoid taking student loans, for the love of God, avoid it. However, because all student loans are a bet. You're betting that you will be able to get a job that will allow you to afford to pay it off. And you need to understand that that is not guaranteed. And that the current student loan system that is set up is predatory and bullshit. I personally am in favor of student forgiveness. And to be clear, I'm not talking about subsidizing student loans. I'm actually opposed to that. I'm for student debt cancellation, which is not the same thing as buying that debt. The banks want them to buy the debt. I'm saying, no, we should forgive it. Forgiving it means no one pays for it, by the way. But even then, that will not fix student debt. Student debt is an industry that needs to be massively reformed, like absurdly reformed. It's bad. That's not what this video is about. I'm just pointing out that student debt is a factor. And it's a very big one as to why people don't want to do this. That doesn't, however, that you shouldn't avoid college just because of that, though. Especially if what you really want to do is in college. Ultimately, that's what it really comes down to. What do you think you have the stamina for? You think you have the stamina for a high-paced, very physical trade school education and job? Maybe that's where you go. Do you want a more leisurely paced, but generally more expensive and well-rounded experience where you get to learn all the knowledge they don't tell you in high school? By the way, that's the other big thing about college that a lot of people don't go to college don't realize is that high school education is the bare minimum of education. They are literally shortchanging your asses. And that's in public and even some private institutions. The reality is that there is a lot of education that you do not learn unless you go to college. The knowledge that they are gatekeeping behind fucking paywalls is ridiculous. And the reality is that knowledge is going to make you a more well-rounded person. A trade school job is ultimately a focused type of career. If you want to have a more of an expanded worldview, then college is going to benefit you more, especially if what you really want is the pursuit of knowledge. If you want to pursue knowledge, then college is the way to go. I know what you're saying, but Ruben, I could just read books on my own. And you could. You could. But I have news for you. To actually gain a level of knowledge equivalent to going to college from just reading books requires a lot more of you as an individual than going to college. That's just the reality. Now, I know what you're going to say, Ruben, but I was told that college is just there to brainwash us with liberal values and Marxism. I'm going to be real with you. Unless college has dramatically, markedly changed since I went to college, I don't know where the fuck those people are going to college. I went to Kent State. In my entire time going to Kent State, the closest thing I ever got to a professor who was a Marxist was a professor who described themselves as a materialist. That's as close as I ever got. In all seriousness. Was it also the first place I ever talked to people who were pro-Palestinian? Also, yes. A lot of pro-Palestinian people in college. The reality is there's actually a lot of free thought on college campuses. But, there are certain things that college opens your mind up to that some conservatives are uncomfortable with. The reality is that it's more students who get into Marxism at college, not because college is pushing Marxism, but because they took a comparative political ideology class like I did, and had to read Das Kapital or parts of Das Kapital. But you see, the thing is, the teacher of that class wasn't trying to get me to be communist, because he also taught me about John Locke and conservative policies and Keynesian economics, which, by the way, a lot of people confuse with communism, and a bunch of other political theories as well. But no one pushed Marxism on me. Were there Marxist student groups? Sure there were. But that's because in college, you get exposed to new things, and sometimes those new things become a part of your personality that are either temporary or permanent. Hell, I spent like at least 5 or 6 years as a Taoist until I realized that the just accept life as it is policy is very frustrating. And I am, believe it or not go with the flow stonery enough to get away with that. Can't silence the aching desire in my heart that Buddhism says is the source of all suffering. Buddhism is probably correct. But Buddhists also don't go to the moon. So college or trade school. Ultimately, I hope I've helped you out here. What it all comes down to is, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And how confident are you that you can compete in a market? Do you have the energy for that shit? You might. You might not. And like I said, the reality is that life is ultimately a combination of these two things that are very frustrating for people to accept are the two key things. And those two key things are hard work, being in the right place at the right time. They're not separate, they're together. Those two things are the key to success. And the thing that frustrates some people, though, is that sometimes one will weigh out more a little bit than the other. If you're Tim Pool, it's being in the right place at the right time. Just had to get that jab in there at Tim Pool, who, by the way, is not educated. Tim Pool really should have gone to college. Stop it, Ruben. This video is not about how stupid Tim Pool is. The point is assess your situation, assess your desires, and assess what you think you could emotionally handle. Now, to be fair, sometimes in life you need to push what you think you can emotionally handle. It's the only way to find your boundaries and your limits. That's a scary idea, but sometimes we got to go with it. You take one thing away from this, it's just do research into whichever college or trade school you go to. Oh, by the way, the difference between a college and a university is the university offers master's degrees, which is pretty cool of them. Anyways, thank you for joining me on Ruben Uncut. I hope you had a wonderful time. Please like and subscribe if you are on YouTube. It really helps me out. Also, You can also, of course, check out all these episodes and many more that are not available on YouTube because I recorded them audio only on Spotify, or other major podcast platforms. If you wish to contact the program, you can email me at rubenuncut@gmail.com or do what most people do and leave some super annoying comments in my comment section, like I'm sure you will. Because I'm sure that there are many old people who have either already gone to college or already gone to trade school or watched too much Fox News who are going to have very, very strong opinions about this. It is also worth noting this is an opinion piece trying to be well informed, but you get the picture. I hope you were at least entertained. Have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever you are.